So are we repairing or are we replacing? That's the question.
You in the past, I'm in the future. You mad, they don't salute you. I need a bag.
Thank you so much for clicking on this video. If you're new here, my name is Keela Trishan and I make videos on lifestyle, insurance, and mental health. I also do vlogs, day in the life in the insurance industry, day in the life with a small child, all the things. If that's something that interests you, go on ahead and click that subscribe button below. Turn on your notifications so you don't miss anything from me. And if you're returning, thank you so much for coming back and thank you for your support. Okay, so as y'all know, if you've been watching, I am a field adjuster. I work for a major insurance company in Southern California, and I have the job of going into homes and completing inspections. So right now, while I'm working on the wildfire claims, I'm not doing as many inspections, but on a regular, that is my normal job. Now, with that comes, determining coverage and all of that, things that adjusters do. But one of the biggest issues that I see new adjusters have, and honestly, even somebody like me that's been in the industry for a long time, sometimes it is tough to determine if something can be repaired or if it needs to be completely replaced. So today I'm going to be giving you some tips to help you, especially if you're new to this industry and you're kind of struggling with making those decisions. And also, if you've been in this industry for a while and you still struggle with it, I'm going to give some tips to kind of help you make the right decision every time. So if you're interested, definitely go on ahead and stay tuned. So before I jump into the tips, one thing about the homeowner's policy, and this is for most states, the policy says that if something can be repaired, then that is what your policy will pay for. So some people believe that they're getting lowballed by the insurance company, and a lot of times it's really a misunderstanding. Now, I have seen, a lot of different situations, so I'm not saying that the insurance company is always right. I'm not saying that the customer is always wrong. Definitely not saying that, but the policy will pay for repairing versus replacement if it's possible. So in order to determine if something can be repaired, there are a few things that you need to know. The first thing, you need to know your materials. Now, this can be tricky, especially when you're dealing with cabinets and flooring, in my experience, even sometimes with drywall and plaster. If you are new to the industry and you just don't know, you won't know the difference between drywall and plaster. The repairs or the repairability of a material a lot of times depends on what you're looking at. So there's a difference between laminate flooring versus engineered wood flooring versus solid wood. So I would say, in my experience, in most cases, this is not a blanket statement. Each claim is different, but typically with solid wood floors, you are able to repair them. You might only need to replace the damaged planks and then sand and refinish the rest of the continuous floor just so it all looks the same and blends in. But with laminate flooring, if you're not able to match it, if there's only a few damaged planks and we're not able to match that floor, then you may be in a situation as an adjuster where you have to write for full replacement of all the continuous areas. So that's just kind of a brief overview. Again, this goes for cabinets too. Some cabinets, especially like if they're wood cabinets, a lot of times you're able to replace the damaged portions, and then you can kind of sand and refinish the rest of the cabinet so they match. But in some cases, depending on the material, like a repair might not be feasible. It might be something where you actually have to change all the cabinets so they match. So a lot of different variables, but the very first step is to know what material you're working with. Okay, so the second step is going to be to assess the damages. You really have to know what exactly is damaged. That is going to help you determine if you can save some of the pieces of those items or if you need to do a full replacement. I would say, since I'm working on these wildfires, typically if we're talking about char, this is just an easy example. If most of the cabinets are charred, burned, you're going to have to replace those cabinets. Same thing with like the floor. If it's like, for the most part, completely damaged, you're going to have to replace it. Same thing with laminate flooring. I know I used the example of like the flooring not being available, but in a lot of cases, if you have like water damage, if those planks are swollen, there's going to be no repairing that. A lot of times those damaged planks are going to need to be removed, dried out, and then 9 times out of 10, you're going to be replacing that whole floor. You might have a situation on the flip side where maybe a cabinet door just got scratched. Scratches, depending on the material, if like the boxes are good on the cabinets and the drawers are good, you might only need to sand that out. It might be something where you're able to salvage it and you're not in a situation where you have to replace everything. Same thing with wood flooring. I keep using that because those are like really easy things to kind of reference. But with wood flooring, like if there's a situation where in some theft claims that I've had where there was like a heavy object that was dragged on the flooring, we're talking about scratches on the planks. Maybe it's a situation where it only needs to be sanded and you don't have to replace anything. You just sand and then refinish everything. Again, these are just kind of like overview examples of like what needs to be done and just based on my experience, but every claim is different. So you would really need to talk to your leaders and just kind of use your own expertise when you're on site and then, you know, when you're reviewing your photos, but assess the damage and see what exactly happened, and that'll help you determine if you're in a situation where you can just repair this portion or if you're going to have to go on ahead and replace everything. Okay, so the third tip, and this is going to be mainly on your water losses, you want to look at the mold and moisture risk. So when we have water damage, which is actually the most common damages that we get, at least in my area, is like water damages. Surprising, because I've been working fires for the last like year and a half, but fires prior to this, I would usually get maybe every so many claims, but water claims is like the main damage. With that said, you want to look at what's going on with the material. So if something got wet, are we able to dry it to standard? This is something where you want to talk to like your mitigation vendors. A lot of times they'll set up machines to dry out the material, because sometimes it can just be dried and that'll bring it back to your pre-loss condition. In other cases, maybe they can dry it, but then it'll still be warped or, you know, it'll be swollen. And so then you do need to replace either all of whatever material it is, or you'll have to, at minimum, replace that portion and then, you know, custom build something in its place so it matches the rest of whatever material it is. When it comes to mold is serious. And so if we have a situation where there's mold, 9 times out of 10, whatever portion of that material that's molded will need to be removed. I do see this a lot when we're talking about drywall, especially if water has sat for a little bit, like maybe somebody was out of town and there was like a leak that was going on. A lot of times when the bottom of that drywall gets wet, mold can grow pretty quickly. And so you'll see a lot of times where the bottom portion of the drywall is replaced because we are not able to just dry it in place. They'll do what's called a flood cut. And then that portion of drywall is then replaced during repairs and, you know, painted and sealed to match the rest of the wall. So yeah, you got to see what's going on. But when it comes to like water, mold, and moisture, a lot of times you're going to be in a situation where you're going to have to replace all, if not just a small portion. Okay, so the fourth tip, we kind of briefly touched on this earlier, but if there's any matching concerns, then you might be in a situation where you have to replace all of it. So I'm gonna go back to that laminate flooring example, and excuse me if I'm being repetitive, I'm just trying to make it easy for a new adjuster or, you know, someone new to the industry to understand, as opposed to using super complicated materials. But with laminate floors, this is just kind of like overview information. So a lot of times the type of flooring is discontinued after, you know, maybe 2 to 3 years. That's just something that I've kind of learned and been told by flooring vendors. So if flooring, even though the rest of the flooring might be in great condition, like maybe this section was water damaged, one thing you can do is you can ask the customer if they have leftover flooring. Using myself as an example, I have vinyl plank flooring in my home, and we do have a little bit of leftover flooring. So God forbid something happened in like a small area. If we needed to replace a few planks, we do have some leftover flooring where we wouldn't have to replace everything. We could just replace those few planks. Now, if the damage was larger than those planks, then likely we would be in a situation where we would need to replace the whole floor, or the insurance company would pay to replace the whole floor, because reasonable uniformity is a thing in the damaged area. So if you have continuous areas, that's something that you're going to want to take into consideration. And also your customer 9 times out of 10 is going to ask you about that. The policy owes for pre-loss condition. And so if we can achieve that with repairing, cool. But if not, you're going to be looking at a full replacement. Before I jump on to the next thing, just with that matching situation I kind of gave you guys, there is a line item in Xactimate if you're using that. I believe there's one in Symbility too. I did work for a company that used Symbility, but that's not something that I'm well versed on. So Xactimate specifically, there is a line item for custom cabinets. That's usually something that you can use. Custom cabinets doesn't necessarily mean that it's more expensive, but maybe the cabinets that are in the kitchen or bathroom or whatever the case, maybe those cabinets aren't standard, like standard cabinets that you can go get at Home Depot or Lowe's. Maybe these are cabinets that are specific to the measurements of that particular room. So you can use custom cabinets if you feel like you're able to save the remaining cabinets and you simply have to replace a portion, you can use custom for whatever that square footage is, so a cabinet vendor can like build new cabinets on site for that particular portion. So that's another way to get around complete replacement. But in some cases, you will be in a situation where you owe the whole kitchen, the whole cabinet, wherever it is. Okay, so the fifth tip is to kind of do a cost comparison. Now, in some instances, it's going to be more cost effective for you to just simply replace the item as opposed to trying to repair. And this can depend on a bunch of different factors. I can't really think of a specific example right now, so I'll just kind of do something very surface level. I'm going to go back to floors because that is a common thing that's damaged. But let's say the repairs for a floor, like maybe the material, the labor, maybe there's a special design that needs to be accounted for, so that increases the labor, things like that. Let's say that's $10,000. But to replace the whole floor and just start new, we're talking about $10,500 or $11,000. 9 times out of 10, your leaders are going to just tell you, just go on ahead and replace the floor. Because the problem sometimes with repair is that if the repair does not work or something happens or additional damage is discovered during repair, you might be in a situation where you end up paying for the full floor or whatever the material is anyway. So I wouldn't say to make that decision. If you come into a situation like that, I would say to have a conversation with your leader, whoever is approving your payments. Most new adjusters start out with very low limits. I wouldn't commit to this with the insured or contractor, whoever you're working with. But if you see a situation like that where you're like, you know what, it probably just makes more sense to go on ahead and replace, that's likely going to make everybody happy. So I would say document your file really good on the reasons why you think it should be replaced versus repaired, and then do your cost comparison. If you guys would like me to do a video about noting your file, let me know. I'm still thinking of other types of content for the industry to help you guys. But yeah, note your file and then talk to your leaders and see if it makes sense. But you will be in situations like that where sometimes it just makes more sense to just replace it all as opposed to repairing. The sixth thing that you want to look at is age and condition. So just like how I mentioned earlier that sometimes with laminate flooring, the manufacturer of that flooring will usually discontinue a particular style after 2 to 3 years. You run into that situation where maybe you have like an older home and the floors haven't been changed since the 50s. You have situations with wood floor, for example, solid wood floor, where it's been sanded so many times that the nails are starting to show, and so the floor cannot withstand another sanding. So you might be in a situation where even though only a portion is damaged, in order to get that floor to match, you would have to sand everything, and because the floor cannot withstand that sanding, you will have to replace all of the floors in the continuous areas. So I could go into a deeper overview of like what's considered a continuous area. I'm not going to do that in this video, but if that's something you want to see, let me know. Because usually most insurance companies will stop at breaks, at reasonable breaks. So whatever's in that continuous area, if you're in a situation where the material's old or the material is past its life expectancy, or it's just not in good condition and won't withstand a repair, then you might be in a situation where replacement is the only feasible option to bring it back to pre-loss condition. Number 7 is going to be to document everything. This is very tough for new adjusters because sometimes there's a lot of stuff going on and you might not even know and understand what all you're looking at. One thing that I used to do as a new adjuster when I was on site, I took a lot of pictures. I still take a lot of pictures just in case there's something that I forgot. I can always go back and reference my photos. I know adjusters that will take videos of the spaces that they're in so they can go back and stop the video or zoom in. That's a really good tactic. I haven't done that before, but I know adjusters that it works for. But also sometimes you can dictate the notes on your phone. So you can dictate like on your phone what you're looking at so you can have a better note for your claims file later. But a lot of insurance, because when you look at the policy, sometimes it can be gray. And it's written like that for a reason. It's written like that because there are so many different scenarios that it's impossible to like capture all scenarios in one policy. So there'll usually be like general language, and then you can kind of tailor it to each file or to each claim. So what I do when I'm out on site and I'm, not sure what needs to be done, but I'm leaning towards a certain option, repair versus replace, I'll note everything and the reasoning why I believe that something cannot be repaired. And this is where you can, work with your leadership, because a lot of times the difference between approving replacement versus repair or whatever can be with your documentation and your file notes. Like, if we're just going to be honest, if you can explain why something needs to be done and actually have photos to back it up, expert reports, things like that, then you're more likely to have the claim go in the way that you're trying to get it to go. And I'm not saying to manipulate or anything like that, but I do this all the time. When I talk to my supervisor and I'm on the fence or I'm having to deviate from what we normally do, I'm like, hey, the reason why we need to replace this is because the wood flooring has visible nails, where if we sand, it's not going to bring it back to pre-loss condition. It's going to damage the floor even further. So I recommend just replacing all of it. It'll, be cost effective in the long run, so we don't have any issues in repair. Whatever you need to say. I confirmed with such and such that was on site. They agreed that it should be blah, blah, blah. And then you present that to your management so you can have the claim go in the direction that you want. Okay, so we are finally at number 8, which is when you are not sure and you've done all that other stuff and you just still don't know, call out an expert. That is really going to be the easiest thing to do. So I love calling out experts. And the reason why I do is because, especially on larger claims, like the claims that I work, we're talking about thousands, sometimes millions of dollars. And you don't want to make an incorrect decision on those claims if you can help it. Now, what I will say is that incorrect decisions sometimes happen. And so it's not something to be scared of. They should be learning experiences. But as you get more seasoned in your career, you want to try to lessen those, especially because sometimes mistakes can be very costly. So what I like to do is when I'm not sure, or if there is a debate, like I'm dead set on, hey, we should be able to repair this, and the customer and or their contractor or a public adjuster or attorney is saying that it all needs to be replaced, let's just go on ahead and alleviate the argument and bring in an expert to give us the final determination. Now, one thing is sometimes the expert comes in and they will say, yeah, this actually needs to be replaced. But sometimes that expert will come in and say, no, we can repair it. But if this and this, then this doesn't work, then we'll need to, go for replacement. So what I always do when I call out a vendor is I'm giving them very specific instructions, letting them know this is the problem. This is what we need you to determine. I need you to don't try to, and I'm not saying that this happens on purpose, but there are some vendors that will try to appease the insurance company. I don't want that. And you don't want that either, because at the end of the day, the insurance company owes the benefits of the contract, which is the policy, right? So if we determine that the flooring needs to be replaced, let's not play games. Go on ahead and replace it. But if we determine that a repair will suffice and bring it back to pre-loss condition, then you need to have an actual scope and report to provide the customer so they're more comfortable. The last thing you want people to think is that you are trying to lowball them. And in some situations, customers will look at you sending out a vendor as somebody that's on your side, somebody that's on your team. The vendors know our protocol and they know what we're looking for. So they're supposed to write the estimate to that standard. But also keep it real. Let me know, hey, I'm thinking that I'm not like an expert. I have surface level knowledge of a lot of things, but I don't actually go out and install floors. I don't actually go out and replace drywall and paint. I'm asking the expert, hey, am I right with, us being able to repair? If not, let me know why and provide me with the report that I can get to the customer. So one thing you do want to double check too, especially if you are a new adjuster. Some companies are pretty strict on the usage of vendors. So you want to make sure that you're able to send out a vendor. I would say when in doubt, ask your supervisor, ask your trainer, whatever. I am in a situation where if I feel like a vendor needs to go out, I can send them, but I do need to get approval for like engineers or building consultants, because sending them out usually is like a few $1,000s. So those are on like our more higher level claims. But if I need to send out a leak detection, for example, to determine what leaked, like what caused this this water damage or whatever, then those are things, it's like a few $100 to send them out. I can do that. Same thing with sending out a flooring vendor. If we're trying to determine replacement versus repair, a lot of times they're between, and this is just kind of off the top of the head, they can be between like $300 to like $600 depending on what all they have to do. So usually the insurance company is okay with spending those, but there are even some insurance companies that want you to get approval for that. So if you don't, have a definitive answer, because you need that if you're going to send like a partial denial, you want to make sure that you get an expert out there so you can like definitively determine if this can be repaired versus replaced. All right, you guys, so that is all I have for you today. I really hope that this video was helpful for you. Again, like when I started, I just did not have a lot of these resources, and I honestly don't feel like there were a lot of videos that I could go to. Like there were videos of like contractors in the industry and even like independent adjusters, but it was hard for me to find information for a staff adjuster like myself to be able to determine whether I can repair or replace, or just give me some like tips and guidance on how to do my job. So I was relying on trainers and supervisors, and even sometimes going out to the sites with the mitigation companies and with the contractors, which I do recommend. That is underrated, but it's good if you're new. Like if you're able to go out and inspect with the contractor, if you're able to go out and inspect with the mitigation vendor, they can tell you what they're doing and what they're looking for, so you can kind of learn on the job. And it'll help you with like your future claims. You'll be able to kind of talk. You'll know what they're talking about. You'll know what they're looking for. And then also why something may always need replacement, or why something can always be repaired. Like these are things that you need to know to be more confident in your job. So if you have questions on any of the information that I discussed here, or if you have a separate question that you want to ask, definitely go on ahead and hit me up in the comments. I'm usually good about getting back to you guys within like 1 to 2 days or so, depending on my workload. If you enjoyed this video and you made it this far, definitely go on ahead and give me a thumbs up. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm. If you made it this far and haven't subscribed, what you waiting for? Go on ahead and click that subscribe button below. Turn on your notifications so you don't miss anything from me. That being said, you guys have an amazing day, and I'll see you next time.
You mad, they don't salute you. I need a bag, size is super. They turned your bag, it's like I never knew you. Leader.